The Sega Nomad is a handheld game console by Sega released in North America in October 1995. The Nomad is a portable variation of Sega's home console, the Sega Genesis. Designed from the Mega Jet, a portable version of the home console designed for use on airline flights in Japan, Nomad served to succeed the Sega Game Gear and was the last handheld console released by Sega. Unique about the Nomad is its additional functionality as a home console through a video port designed to be used with a television set. Released late in the Genesis era, the Nomad had a short lifespan. Sold exclusively in North America, the Nomad was never officially released worldwide, and employs regional lockout. Because of the timing of Nomad's release in October 1995, Nomad released to an active game library of over 500 Genesis titles, but did not include any pack-in titles itself. Sega's focus on the Sega Saturn left the Nomad undersupported, and the handheld itself was incompatible with several Genesis peripherals, including the power base converter, the Sega CD, and the Sega 32X. Selling approximately 1 million units, the Nomad is considered to be a commercial failure. History. The Genesis was Sega's entry into the 16-bit era of video game consoles. In Japan, Sega released the Mega Jet, a portable version of the Mega Drive designed for use on Japan Airlines flights. As a condensed version, the Mega Jet required a connection to a television screen and a power source, and so outside of airline flights it was only useful in cars equipped with a television set and cigarette lighter receptacle. Planning to release a new handheld console as a successor to the Sega Game Gear, Sega originally intended to produce a system which was to feature a touchscreen interface, released 2 years before the Game.com handheld by Tiger Electronics. However, such technology was very expensive at the time, and the handheld itself was estimated to have a high cost. Instead, Sega chose to suspend the idea and instead release the Sega Nomad, a handheld version of the Genesis. The code name used during development was Project Venus. The Nomad was released in October 1995 in North America only. The release was 5 years into the market span of the Genesis, with an existing library of more than 500 Genesis games. According to former Sega of America research and development head Joe Miller, the Nomad was not intended to be the Game Gear's replacement and believes that there was little planning from Sega of Japan for the new handheld. Sega was supporting 5 different consoles: Saturn, Genesis, Game Gear, Pico, and the Master System, as well as the Sega CD and Sega 32X add-ons. In Japan, the Mega Drive had never been successful and the Saturn was more successful than Sony's PlayStation, so Sega Enterprises CEO Hide Nakayama decided to focus on the Saturn. With the Nomad's late release several months after the launch of the Saturn, combined with a 1996 release of Poker copyright Mon for Nintendo's Game Boy, the Nomad is said to have suffered from its poorly timed launch. Sega decided to stop focusing on the Genesis in 1999, by which time the Nomad was being sold at less than a third of its original price. The final Nomad sales estimate is about 1 million units. Technical specifications. Similar to the Genesis and the Mega Jet, the Nomad's main CPU is a Motorola 68000. Possessing similar memory, graphics, and sound capabilities, the Nomad is nearly identical to the full-size console. The only variation that is completely self-sufficient. The Nomad has a 3.25-inch backlit color screen and also contains an AV output that allows the Nomad to be played on a television screen, a feature unique to the Nomad. Design elements of the handheld were made similar to the Sega Game Gear, but included 6 buttons for full compatibility with later Genesis releases. Also included were a red power switch, headphone jack, volume dial, and separate controller input for multiplayer games. The Nomad could be powered by an AC adapter, a rechargeable battery pack known as the Genesis Nomad Power Back, or 6 AA batteries, which provide a battery life of 2 to 3 hours. The Nomad consumed more power than Sega's earlier portable gaming console, the Game Gear. The Nomad also lacks a reset button, which makes it impossible to complete certain games, such as the X-Men video game, which require pressing the button to finish certain objectives. The Nomad is fully compatible with several Genesis peripherals, including the Sega Activator, Team Play Adapter, Mega Mouse, and the Sega Channel and XBAND network add-ons. However, the Nomad is not compatible with the Power Base Converter, Sega CD, or Sega 32X. This means that the Nomad can only play Genesis titles, whereas the standard Genesis can also play Master System, Sega CD, and 32X titles with the respective add-ons. Game Library. The Nomad does not have its own game library, but instead plays Genesis games. At the time of its launch, the Nomad had over 500 games available for play. However, no pack-in title was included. The Nomad can boot bootleg, unlicensed, and homebrew games made for the Genesis Mega Drive. Some earlier third-party titles have compatibility issues when played on the Nomad, but can be successfully played through the use of a Game Genie. Likewise, due to its incompatibility with the Power Base Converter, Sega CD, and Sega 32X, the Nomad is not supported to play games for the Master System or either of the Mega Drive Genesis add-ons. The Nomad employs regional lockout, but methods have been found to bypass this. Reception and legacy. Reception for the Nomad is mixed between its uniqueness and its poor timing into the market. Blake Snow of GamePro listed the Nomad as fifth on his list of the 10 worst-selling handhelds of all time, criticizing its poor timing into the market, inadequate advertising, and poor battery life. Scott Allen Marriott of Allgame placed more than simply timing into reasons for the Nomad's lack of sales, stating, "The reason for the Nomad's failure may have very well been a combination of poor timing, company mistrust and the relatively high cost of the machine." Genesis owners were too skittish to invest in another 16-bit system. The staff of Retro Gamer, however, praised the Nomad, saying in a retrospective that Nomad was the first true 16-bit handheld, and declared it the best variant of the Genesis. In the same article, Retro Gamer notes the collectability of the Nomad, due to its low production, and states, had Sega cottoned onto the concept of the Nomad before the Mega Drive 2, and rolled it out as a true successor to the Mega Drive, then perhaps Sega may have succeeded in its original goal to prolong the life of the Mega Drive in the US. See also: Sega Genesis, list of Sega Genesis games, comparison of handheld game consoles. References